I want to make a brief statement about Laos. It is, I think, important for all Americans to understand this difficult and potentially dangerous problem.
I first went to Vietnam in 1963, and McNamara came over there in 63, and I don't think anybody understood what was going on, and neither did we. When McNamara came over there, they flew him to some very choice places, and I happened to be a co-pilot in an airplane that was carrying paratroopers in case McNamara ever got in trouble. Okay, so they took him to these places that they wanted him to see, but not places where things were really happening.
I knew very, very little about Air America, but I knew all about CAT and SAT, that's Southern Air Transport. So I wrote my letter to get hired by Air America. I wrote to Civil Air Transport in Taipei, Taiwan.
It's difficult to say, but it had to be somebody that was sort of, I think, looking for a little bit of excitement, a little bit of adrenaline, and something that was going to cause your adrenaline to get up a little bit.
We did them dirt. It was a cop-out, what they did.
It was, we didn't do it right.
You can't do this, you can't do that, and we ended up with rules of engagement. You can't really fight a war with rules of engagement.
Actually, we don't like communism. That's why we don't want it to come to my country. So we fight outside my country first.
Many lives were lost attacking the foreigners, the Americans. I am not afraid to sacrifice my flesh and blood, everything for my country.
In April 1975, America's participation in the war in Southeast Asia came to a close, most notably with the fall of Saigon and the evacuation of the U.S. Embassy. Less well known is the wind-down of the American participation in the war in neighboring Laos. In particular, the fall of Long Chen, what some refer to as the most secret place on Earth. One of the last flights out was captained by Les Strauss. This ended an 11-year off-and-on career for Strauss in Southeast Asia. Today, Les Strauss still lives in Thailand, and his thoughts often drift back to that tumultuous decade.
It's a completely different kind of war than what we think of. You think of people here shooting one another like that. And no, there's a couple people here and a couple people here and maybe a squad doing something once in a while, but it was not group warfare or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. That was clandestine stuff.
For Les and the other men who served in Laos, Vietnam, Thailand, and Cambodia, it had begun much more promisingly in the early 1960s. At that time, John F. Kennedy made Laos the priority.
The security of all Southeast Asia will be endangered if Laos loses its neutral independence.
Counterinsurgency.
Laos and Vietnam became a testing ground for Kennedy's policy of counterinsurgency, especially a counterinsurgency orchestrated by CIA case officers, but fought entirely by local militias and Royal Lao and South Vietnamese government forces.
Very few people knew about Vietnam, not only in the civilian population, but the military. Very few military people knew about what was going on in Vietnam. And matter of fact, I've got a picture of the three of us, the first three guys to go on a PCS, permanent change of station, to Vietnam to set up the initial forward air control program for permanent party instead of TDY that they were taking out of PACAP. So there were three of us in the state, they put it in the base newspaper, and we had one guy with a pith helmet on and an arrow going through it with a little card up there that said, "East is east and west is west, but where in the hell is Vietnam?" Anyway, so that's in the military. So that gives you an idea. Nobody really knew much about Vietnam.
One of the principal components of this policy would become the CIA's proprietary airline, Air America, and privately owned ventures such as Continental Air Services. Air America was part of the wider campaign throughout Vietnam and Laos during the early 1960s and 1970s. But for most Americans, the region remained lost to their imagination. For them, the Cold War confrontation focused on Berlin and the construction of the Berlin Wall in 1961. And closer to home, in 1959, Fidel Castro's successful communist revolution made Cuba into a platform for Russian incursion into the Americas. For Southeast Asians, of course, the impact of America's policies were immediate and tangible. And it was in Southeast Asia that America would find nearly all its energy concentrated for the next 10 to 15 years. Another member of Air America was Izzy Friedman, who served in both South Vietnam and Laos. Today, Friedman lives in Thailand, a country incredibly changed from the time he was a young man stationed there in the 1960s.
Well, when I first came here, Bangkok was really a small town. That was 1963. There was only a few bars, as we might know bars. There was Thai nightclubs with entertainment and beautiful girls.
About that.
And then in 1968, they started building, it started to grow dramatically.
Friedman's love for Thailand is still evident today. In some ways, he is the perfect symbol of the veterans of the war in Southeast Asia, who discovered a lifestyle, culture, and people they felt close to, and all of which made them never want to return home.
I find the living here just more relaxed. I live, as I say, in the country side and with local markets, and if I want a city, it's only 25 minutes away. I've been in Asia over 50 years. I think this is sort of home.
Then, much more so than today, Thailand was a linchpin for American foreign policy in the area.
Nobody understands what the Thais did. People don't realize that there was thousands and thousands and thousands of Thais that went into Laos to fight a war. And many of them were lost, okay? The guys that were up there, that were running that thing for the Thais, with the help of the agency guys, they're all generals. They were top guys. They came home here and progressed in the military, and they did a great job. And the Thais did a good job, but the whole thing was geared so that we couldn't win the war.
The Thais at the peak had 25,000 troops in Laos. of which the Thai people never, to this day, I don't think they know. They didn't know that they had that many Thai people. And those people that went to Laos, they all, when the war in Laos was over, those people became the leaders in the Thai Army, the Thai Air Force, and the Thai Navy. Even the Thai Navy had guys up there. And so I think the military leadership and the political leadership in Thailand, they allowed that to happen. They cooperated with the U.S. in that respect. So I think they went along. I really can't comment on how the Thais felt towards the end when we bailed out like that. But anyway, they did get rid of our bases over here.
Those people, like I said, reside from the army first. And we got a lot of Thai people to be assigned as the instructor for those small group of Lao soldiers to lead them how to fight and something like that. Thai people almost forgot, but we didn't forget them. Most of the Thai don't even know that those people go to work in Laos for the country. They've been fighting. Nobody knows them.
Alone among Southeast Asian countries, Thailand had developed an impressive infrastructure with the help of the United States. It made the country a staging area to resist communist expansion in the region.
The main reason we were involved with Air America was most likely politics, government ideology, and political processes. We were open to the free world. We weren't converted to socialist ideals. The most important thing must have been the location of Thailand, being the center of the region, a linchpin in the domino theory, or the falling of nations to communism. The Vietnam War and the Red Scare gave way to military aid, an opportunity for our country to receive new weapons and advanced arms to protect our country, as well as form alliances with our allies to keep threats out of our country. Air America was responsible for producing flight mechanics. We had no knowledge of what the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration was. We were only made aware after Air America settled in. The FAA was involved in checking and maintaining the standards of pilots in all sectors involving aviation.
Sompop Sucharitchan served as a paratrooper in the Royal Thai Army in 1953. He subsequently found himself employed as an interpreter for the U.S. Army in Laos. This, in turn, led to him getting a job with Air America.
We were exposed to a much bigger world. Especially, I know the mechanics and chief mechanics, they were all Chinese, Taiwanese, even Filipinos. Only with Air America did Thais have this sort of chance. It was an eye-opener.
Still today, Thailand's role in assisting the United States and the Royal Lao government remains largely unrecognized. The history is murky, and the political ramifications are still a sensitive subject for both Thailand and Laos. Up until 1962, American aid to Laos was overt, but the 1962 Geneva Accords required the removal of all foreign troops from Laos. While the North Vietnamese openly violated the agreement, the United States largely complied, at least initially. But the continuing destabilization of Laos soon meant that covert American operations returned to the country. Air America became part of that covert operation. The heritage of Air America came directly from Claire Chennault and his Flying Tigers, a volunteer group of American pilots in China who flew missions against the invading Japanese in World War II.
It was something different. It was not normal Army Air Corps or something. I think that was it. They were volunteers. They went and did it because they wanted to do it, not because they had to. They were the forerunner. And only they were, I can't say they were more official government. They're the same kind of thing, a paramilitary organization.
After the war, Chennault would found Air America's predecessor, Civil Air Transport, or CAT. CAT supported the French during the First Indochina War, supplying the doomed French garrison at Dien Bien Phu until its fall, signaling the defeat of France in Vietnam.
I know that there were risks of getting killed enlisting as a soldier, but it was my determination to free the country. The victory at Dien Bien Phu became a strong motivator for all the warriors. We must defeat the intruders. It was my determination, regardless of how hard it was. I must fight. I must do it.
By 1957, with the defeat of the French, CAT, which later became Air America, had begun permanent operations in Laos. The first generation of Air America personnel was drawn from World War II veterans. The next generation, nurtured in the 1950s, and brought into the exotic intrigue of Indochina in the 1960s, combined a strong sense of American and Asian patriotism with a yearning for adventure and challenge.
I looked at my contemporaries back in Pennsylvania, went to a factory and pushed a button to turn on a machine in the morning and pushed a button to turn it off in the afternoon, and they cleaned it once a week. That was not for me. No how. Because from the time I went in Navy Reserve when I was 17, I was never really home in one place doing one job. There was always something different, and it suited me better. Not even thinking of it as spook work, but most of it was. Most of it was behind the scenes, things that were not publicized. Makes life interesting.
Many of those coming to Air America had experience in Vietnam, but they found themselves frustrated by the bureaucracy, the rules, the regulations that they claimed hamstrung their efforts to fight the enemy. Laos offered an alternative. It was a place where top-heavy political meddling and excessive rules gave way to secret missions and individual initiative, and what these men saw as the opportunity to make a tangible, real difference.
Laos was different. Vietnam, the U.S. military and the politicians were involved. In Laos, pretty much run by the CIA the way they wanted to do it, up until the end. And at the end, then things sort of fell into the political pot, and then we didn't do a good job of leaving.
McNamara came over there in '63, and I don't think anybody understood what was going on, and neither did we. When McNamara came over there, they flew him to some very choice places. And I happened to be a co-pilot in an airplane that was carrying paratroopers in case McNamara ever got in trouble. Okay? So they took him to these places that they wanted him to see, but not places where things were really happening. And so when he was finished with his 3 days here or something, he said, we'll have the boys home by Christmas. I'm going to say that was probably in August. When I came to Vietnam, there was 12,000 people there. When I left, Americans. And when I left, there was 18,000 there, and I left the day before Christmas. They didn't have any, and they went back. And the other thing, the leadership of the people that were running the war, they wanted to stay there. They didn't want to, they really, their life, like in Saigon, the CIA guys, the big bosses. They were running around with pretty girls and nightclubs and things like that. They thought they'd be there forever, and that's the way they wanted it.
An additional component of the secret war consisted of the forward air controllers, or FACs, also known as Ravens in Laos. They were perhaps the most secretive element of the secret war, wearing civilian clothes, operating out of small observation aircraft outfitted with rockets. The Ravens were among the most aggressive and independent of the American forces in Laos.
The Ravens, some of the Ravens were, they were military, but they were in civilian clothes. They tended to cowboy a bit, but they really had it hanging out, so they deserved the right to play the game. They were military, but they were stripped of their ID cards and their uniforms. They worked in civilian clothes, and they worked in Laos and Vietnam, primarily in Laos. And they did target spotting for the best movers, for the fighters and the bombers. And they lived out in the boonies, wherever they were working, and they were dedicated.
Another Air America veteran, Willie Utterback, flew for the U.S. Air Force before coming to Laos. And he had trained forward air controllers before moving on to the job of flying Air America transport aircraft.
So I went up in this airplane, and my first mission was to go up on the China border with Team 28 and drop some ammo. They were running out of ammo. So I did that, and I ended up with 39 bullet holes in the airplane, and one of the first rounds severed the trim cable, which put me in a dive bomb altitude, and I got the airplane turned around and got back to 118 Alpha that Nam Yu was 35-minute flight from the China border down to that base. Got on the ground and looked at the airplane. It looked like a sieve. It had holes everywhere. So at that point, I decided I needed a calm drink. So I drank a couple of these small bottles of Mekong whiskey, and another airplane with the three of the big wheels that were in a little bird program came up and looked at the airplane, and our AMF, we call them, for the Helio and the Porter program. He said, "Willie, what airplane were you flying yesterday?" And I said, 96 X-ray. He said, "Well, it just crashed over at Sam Tong." I said, that's it, I'm going into the care boot.
Events could change quickly in Laos. In one instance, perhaps no other story illustrates the changing nature of the war than Sariporn Bibangun's remembrance of Christmas Day 1968.
Christmas, December 25th, 1968. Picked up the Santa Claus at 1 p.m. The Santa Claus sat there, then hopped down to give gifts to the children. My CAA customer then urgently requested a helicopter after hearing that a Takan station, which is a station that supplies guidance for air navigation, was raided and burnt, and there were 4 dead American officers still there. He wanted to retrieve the dog tags. I managed to call a Raven to accompany me and said, "Hey, can you go out and check Lima Site 61? It was raided last night. Are there any hostiles in the area?" He went in and flew around low.
All quiet here, no problem.
So then I went in to land. My 2 passengers then went in to retrieve the tags and got back to the helicopter. As they were about to board the plane, and I was about to take off, I saw a flash of light straight ahead. Then the sound of gunfire was all around us. I looked for a place where the incoming fire was weakest. That was where I was going to exit. It took 30 seconds to lift off. We were hit all over, uncountable. It sounded like people throwing pebbles at a gate. I then thought, all right, we're fine now. But I was already injured. I looked at the dashboard and my oil pressure level was 0. The engine was going to fail. I said, we're about to crash. I had to land in the jungle. There was no other place. The blades were all ruined, but the chopper managed to land upright. When they retrieved it, they counted 104 entry and exit bullet holes. So they must have shot me at least 52 times. The holes were all over, but the scariest ones went through the windshield. Here at the windshield, 2 bullets passed through. The windshield is almost 2 inches thick, but the bullets cut through and missed me by a few inches. Had they been lower, they would have been in my brain, and I would be gone.
In contrast, Les Strauss had his plane hit once and then never received any other damage.
19th day in Laos, watching a helicopter get shot down. That, it was there, and all of a sudden it was on the ground smoking. And then when we went down to look to see if there's survivors and getting 19 holes in the airplane, that has to be the most memorable experience. We didn't get shot down, and they survived. The guys that were in the helicopter survived. There were other things that might say were exciting, but that's the one that really stands out in my mind. But one thing, I was still relatively new there, and the other thing, the seriousness of it. Probably sort of made me gloss over everything that happened after that. I never took around in an airplane after that. When I was flying, never got a hole in an airplane.
In some instances, people did not know what they were getting into, as Chick Reynolds remembers.
They would come in with a idea of what Air America was like and what they were going to get. A shoot-'em-up airline. That's what they expected. All the new pilots that came in, they all thought they were going to fly a P-51, and they were very disappointed. And we said, talk to the chief pilot. That's his job. But we don't have any P-51s, so you're out of luck there.
A former U.S. Marine, Chick Reynolds came to Air America in the early 1960s. He was situated primarily in Bangkok, where Air America's office was located on Patpong Road. This part of Bangkok has gone through several transformations since that time. Today, it is but a vestige of its former self. Somewhat seedy and run down, the street still contains one icon from that era, the Madrid. Long rumored to be a CIA hangout, the Madrid remains a meeting spot for those Air America expats still in Thailand.
I wanted this place to be where friends would meet and socialize, relax. Most of the customers were from embassies, Air America, JustMag, as well as different airlines. It was very different back then. It was a relaxing atmosphere, not too much, not too little. Now it all seems turned upside down.
Madrid opened in 1969, so it was not a year earlier like some reports. And the owner, very popular. The bar itself became a success from the start. It became the hangout for Air America and the CIA and lots of other people up through the 1980s, into the early 1990s. Then sort of changed, different crew. The older Air America CIA people left for one reason or another, and the up-and-coming business people tend more to go to hotel lobbies than they do to the bars. Has been successful for all those years and still going.
In Laos, Air America had as its task the delivery of food, termed soft rice, or weapons, termed hard rice.
Sometimes we have to get up at 5 in the morning to be ready for drop some cargo, food or ammunition to the people out there looking for it at 6 o'clock. have to get up at 4:30, take off at 5 o'clock, drop there and come back. If you cannot do it in the morning due to weather or something, you try again in the evening, at night. Sometimes they've been starving over there for 3 months, 3 years, 3 days. No food. We have to drop maybe the dry food or something first, and then. But those people, they need fresh food. They need some meat, some vegetable, fresh food. But some ration in dry food, they don't like it. And sometimes they are just about to take over the place. We have to drop them ammunition at night sometimes. It's very difficult job and very dangerous too.
หน้าที่คิกเกอร์ก็คือว่า
A kicker's job was to check the load or the cargo, a bundle or supplies or whatever you want to call it, and make sure that they are in good condition, that they are safe to take in flight.
อยู่ในสภาพที่ว่าเอาขึ้นไปแล้วไม่เป็นอันตรายถ้าเป็น
If it is a container or medical supplies, does it smell or will it be a danger to us?
พอตรวจสอบเสร็จพวก
And after checking, the ground loading crew will then load them up. Our job was to supervise that, make sure that they organized and loaded them up in order.
ให้เขาวางให้ถูกต้องซึ่งเขาก็โดยเบสิกแล้วเขาก็จะรู้ดีในการโหลดเครื่องบิน
Another mission of Air America was the transporting of CIA case officers, termed customers, to remote landing strips all across Laos, called Lima sites.
เราเรียกว่า
Air America would call the CIA case officers customers. We would call them customers when they boarded the plane and sat with us.
Among the notables were people like Vang Pao, the Hmong general, who conducted a guerrilla war from Long Chen, or Lima Site 20A.
He's a great fighter. Because Wang Pao that Lao can last longer. Otherwise, it's been gone maybe 2-3 years before that. Wang Pao. I trained his pilot, and I went to visit him one time in Longcheng. He gave me a ring, but I don't know, I lost it. He gave me a golden ring with the insignia of his Hmong people. He didn't talk too much, and he grabbed my hand like a French way. He don't squeeze. He just touch my hand, don't squeeze. That's the French way to do.
Van Pao was the leader of the Hmong people, and when he left, any semblance of control left with him. I landed and immediately got mobbed by hundreds of people. Before that, 66 people were lined up. 66 people got on the airplane, we left, no problem. But we had to cancel any more air evacuation or launch. That's why I became the last one because of.
Among the American CIA case officers was Tony Poe, a name which still resonates in the mythology of the Secret War.
The rumor was, and for those of you who have seen Apocalypse Now, the colonel that went rogue in that thing, played by Marlon Brando, that was supposed to be based on one of our CIA case officers, Tony Poe, up at 118 Alpha, the guy I went to work with when I got my butt shut off there back in 69. So anyway, whether that's true or not, whether they based it on, because he wasn't military, or he was back in World War II, but Tony was, did kind of go rogue a little bit. They weren't supposed to get married, but he married a Lao princess. He was a great fighter, and he was well loved by the Hmong people. He was loyal to them.
He was a character. He was big, he was loud, he drank a lot, he did a lot of work, and he got shot and wounded, I think, 27 times. That's somebody who's dedicated to the job and dedicated to the Meo or mountain people. We didn't know the term Hmong. That's a modern thing, and we sort of joke that that came when some Meo came to the States and got educated. And no offense meant if I mentioned Meo, because it was referring to all mountain tribes in Laos without any animosities or any derogatory meaning. And Tony loved the Meo people. And he just did what had to be done. And he didn't care what the head office thought. And Tony's way was Tony's way.
Our operation for Tony Poe, we could do more work for Tony than anybody else we worked for. But the guys that worked for Tony, they liked Tony. The guys that worked for Tony liked Tony. Other guys someplace else might have said, Tony, yak, Tony didn't get along with Vang Pao, Tony didn't do this. But I think, as I say, as far as we were concerned, we got the job done up there. He got the job done.
Then, the Hmong and other mountain tribes lived in remote, hard-to-access mountain villages. It is a situation that has not changed much even today. Laos is still a country difficult to traverse. Its roadways limited. Where they do exist, they are dangerous, with steep vertical cliffs on one side, the peril of rock slides and landslides on the other. And during the rainy season, the omnipresent chance of road collapses. The mountain tribes, and particularly the Hmong, are central to the story of the secret war in Laos. They were the ones who, for the most part, held the line against the Pathet Lao and North Vietnamese. It was their implementation of counterinsurgency tactics and strategy that at times threatened to push communist forces almost back into North Vietnam. And it was the Hmong who, during and after the war, suffered terrible casualties. First, during battlefield attrition, and second, following the communist victory in 1975. In what the Hmong say was a systematic application of reprisals and massacres.
I never been in Vietnam, never been in Cambodia, just overfly. But in Laos, I have to work close to those people, especially the Hmong people. They live in a mountain, up in the mountain. You have to close air support them and then drop them and then move them from here to here, here to here. But they are very good fighter, the Hmong, very good fighter. If I say frankly, the Lao people, they don't intend to fight. These Hmong people fight for the country a lot. Oh, the Hmong, they fight with their life, the Hmong. I love those Hmong. And I train him to fly too, those Hmong. Some of them don't know how to read or to write. I have to train them over maybe about 3 months how to read and write. They didn't know what the different direction from north is south, east or west. They don't know the direction. You have to teach them everything. Teach them to count, to calculate before they can fly. It's a very difficult job, but I love it. And after that, they can fly. They can fly. But about 75 of them, they can graduate only about 50. Because those Hmong is very short. His leg has kind of approach to the rudder. Very short guy. But he's willing to fly.
In many ways, Laos today is untouched by the modern world. Its terrain and landscapes, some of the most beautiful in the world. Its way of life frozen in the past. with one exception: the continuing presence of unexploded bombs all across many provinces. The hardest hit province is Xiang Khouang. Just outside the province's capital city, Phonsavan, lies the Plain of Jars. This was the most contested battlefield of the Secret War.
When we were at war with the foreigners, they had advanced weapons. They had napalm bombs, which they dropped on civilian houses, and complicated bombs and mines. Very advanced. When the Americans attacked, it was heavy, especially at Xiang Khouang. Regardless of rainy or dry season, they never ceased the attacks. Besides the landmines, there were also bombs dropped from fighter jets and B-52s, the very advanced American jet bomber. Every single day, 4, 8, 10 bombs from 1 or 2 B-52s. Bombs deployed every 15 minutes. During the rainy season, the mud would cover up the bombs. If you flew in today and looked from above, you would see the cluster of bomb craters from the B-52 bombs.
The battlefield in Laos was different from that in almost any other war. The fighting was fluid, sometimes skipping over vast terrain and then emerging on mountaintops, in secreted valleys, or along roads and pathways. Even the jungle warfare in Vietnam was more patterned and predictable than the arena in Laos.
The mountains, the weather, the condition of the strips, everything. Laos had to be the toughest flying I've ever done anywhere. Situation changes from minute to minute, and lots of my good friends flew into the side of mountains, and because they wouldn't turn around and go home. Vietnam, we knew basically where the enemy was. In Laos, it was a guess. Well, they were here last night, or they weren't there last night. Ernie Brace, the guy that landed on an airstrip that was enemy held. They weren't there last night. They were there when he landed. And he spent 7 years, I think, in Hanoi Hilton. Things like that can happen.
This was what made Air America's contribution to the war so vital. The only things connecting the guerrilla fighters to any sort of centralized command and coordinated strategy were the various short takeoff and landing, or STAL aircraft, used by Air America and Continental Air Services. Planes such as the Helio Courier, the Pilatus Porter, and the C-7 Caribou form the backbone of a logistical transport system that enabled a small mountain-based resistance force to keep the North Vietnamese and the Pathet Lao at bay from 1962 to 1975.
This one is only carried the people back and forth from the mountain top, because in Laos we have a lot of mountain. Sometimes we make a short strip on top of the mountain. No other aircraft cannot land except this one, or the helicopter. But by that time, helicopter not very much in Laos. People and cargo, or everything. Food, ammunition, rice paddy, rice sack, something like everything. Whatever they put in, I take it. we come close with the Hmong people, and they are the front guard of our airfield too. In that case, we have to go to talk to the people to make a recognition in the front line. The customer, CIA customer, we go with us and we talk to the people on the ground, what's going on there. So he has planned for tomorrow for attack or something.
Long Chen was the headquarters of this effort. But scores of smaller Lima sites existed. And it was around some of these Lima sites that many of the most dramatic clashes took place, such as LS-85, Pupati, LS-36, the Alamo, and even LS-16, Vang Vieng. The karst topography, which makes Laos so picturesque and beautiful, also made it deadly and dangerous for the pilots. They faced currents of mist and flowing clouds. And dealt with sudden floods.
A strip 600 feet wide at 3,200 feet above sea level, and like a ski slope, you land this way and you take off this way, and it doesn't matter what the wind is. You come down this end, and sometimes the wind is such that you actually fall off the end of the runway into the valley, and that kind of stuff. And it's really tough flying, and, especially the STOL airplanes. You go out and you put in a 14-hour day doing that kind of flying is hard. Anybody, all the flying was hard, but STOL particularly, and the helicopters, people did things that you wouldn't do under normal circumstances. You know, and we had to convince, hey, if we don't get that load of rice in there today, they won't starve before tomorrow. That kind of thing, because some guys were, well, I'm going to get in. Well, the weather in there is really bad, and the next thing you know, the guys plowed into the side of a mountain.
While war raged over the mountainous north and northeast, and along Laos' border with Vietnam, the lowlands of Vientiane and other cities along the Thai border were relatively untouched. Today's Vientiane contrasts greatly with the small colonial outposts that existed in the 1950s and 1960s. Today, a mini boom of sorts is taking place. Vientiane and other parts of Laos are starting to modernize. But the city and the country still fulfill the expectations of what many visitors imagine a pre-modern version of Southeast Asia to be. More than its neighbors, who have all seen large foreign investment transform their cityscapes and countryside, the traditional Laos still exists. Although it is on the brink of disappearing too, especially in Vientiane. As the veterans of the Secret War gradually fade into their later years, the cultural appeal of Southeast Asia that so attracted them also has begun to fade into yet one more cosmopolitan, globalized, international culture. The type of person pulled towards these events has long since disappeared from contemporary society. With the exception of the Lao, it is hard to imagine modern-day Asians or Americans undertaking the hardship these people faced routinely.
I was young, gung-ho. I wanted to get into combat, get some medals, Terry and the pirate stuff.
It had to be somebody that was sort of, I think, looking for a little bit of excitement, a little bit of adrenaline, and something that was going to cause your adrenaline to get up a little bit.
Yeah, I think it was the same thing with the fixed-wing pilots. The guys that came out of the military, especially the ones that didn't retire, they were looking for excitement. I think they were looking for that excitement that they weren't getting in the military, and the Air America was the way to do it.
The friendly appearance attract me to work in, because I think the Air America is the professional company. They're very smart to pick up the people to work with them. But they said, "Oh, you're not American. You're Thai. You're local people." I said, "We have both the same right. We are same captain, same rank. We have to be equal, not to be separate, something like that."
The leadership of the party sets us up to be determined that you must do, you must go. It was your only option. Before going into a battle, you must prepare your own coffin. That was the determination of young Lao men. Why would we be sad? It is what you have to do to be the owner of your country. If the people, the government, wanted me to do it, then I must. The enemy consisted of mercenaries. They got paid. The Pathet Lao did not get paid. We fought for our country. We firmly believed that there was no way the enemy could defeat us, people without a paycheck. Our only cause was to free our country.
They were pretty sharp. They were good. They were dedicated. That was the primary thing. They were dedicated to a cause. It was their country. Okay, we were on the other side of their country, but it was their country. You could understand their dedication. I looked at it from a standpoint, I could never do that again. I was young enough, maybe stupid enough, but I was young enough then that I enjoyed it. Hard work, yes. Hard parting, but I enjoyed both. You get out there and work. You got self-satisfaction, I guess you'd call that. And that's what I got out of the flying, was self-satisfaction more than anything else. I can do that, I can accomplish that, but not to the point that I followed somebody into the side of a mountain.
I think he needs to be brave, needs to like aviation. Wouldn't complain, "Oh, today is heavy, today's dangerous," or "I'm taking off on such a short runway, I'm doomed." It had to be someone who loves taking risks. If the landing strip is short, so what? It has to be someone who's a little cuckoo in the head, has to like risks. Like the pilots, the helicopter pilots. It was very dangerous. They would fly into mountains or get shot at. But it was fun.
I guess it's the hazard of flying which unites all the American pilots. They just stick together.
As this era comes to a close, a few questions remain. What is the future of Southeast Asia? And what is the legacy of the war for those living today?
The war is a war. Now it's over. They're communism. They're communists. We are Democrat. But now we are friendly. We're friendly together. We forget about the past. It's gone. It's gone. I went to Vietnam. I talked to Vietnamese people. They're happy to see us. They come to Thailand. We're happy to see them. I went to Laos. They're happy. We are no more enemy.
Now, Laos has freedom and sovereignty, a democratic nation throughout. We think that Laos and its people will keep and protect our land. Gaining freedom of our land was to benefit our people. Before, we didn't even have food to eat. After the liberation of our land, the government has led us to a fruitful and productive present and future. The people no longer have to suffer. They have a house to live in, a car to drive. When the country belongs to its people, it is better. So I think we need to continue to protect and maintain our nation.
If we take this Vietnam experience, I think the average person that's my age has just, it's out of their mind. They don't even remember it. And as far as the military culture is, or the political that's wrapped in with the military, they've never learned their lesson. They're making the same mistakes now that they made in Vietnam. I don't see the policy changing. I don't see it. But I don't think the civilian population has taken anything out of or learned anything from Vietnam. And I would like to see more writings by Americans who were in Vietnam at the tail end on how they felt and how they have felt about the American betrayal to those people, because it sickens me. It sickens me.
Right at the end of the Vietnam War, there was some very, very strong feeling in Thailand against Americans. Okay? But, and the currency showed it, everything. But it took a little while, but I think that ended. That anti-American feeling, because they felt they had been let down. Because I remember it was really bad. And now I think the feeling towards Americans here is quite good. Yeah.
I have a problem with America's view of most places. America tends to try to be a dictator and tell every other country how to do things. And I disagree with that. Thais have their culture. We should learn, as Americans, we should learn to live with that. I preferred the old time, but progress has to come.
I'm very proud that I flew for America, and it is the best job I've ever had. And I'm a little bit old now, but if I wasn't this old and Air America was still flying, I would probably still be there. It was special.
The war has now been over for more than 40 years. Its effects so devastating that it can now be said there were no real winners in the end. Everybody lost, especially in Laos, where unexploded American cluster bombs continue to plague the countryside. All the nations of the region suffered some degree of fracturing and damage. Now, only living memories remain, and soon they too will disappear.